If you're setting up a critical audio system and you're spending some buku bucks on that system, you got the great speakers in place. You finally found your amplifier or integrated amplifier. You finally decided between tubes and solid state, right? You then found your streamer, right, for your digital front end. But what about the DAC? How important is the DAC? Can you just get away with the one that's built into your integrated amp? Maybe. But I have to say, I've been listening to a boatload of DACs over the last year, trying to find the one that will fit my preferences in my reference system, in my main system. I've tried the Chord Dave, the Chord Cutis, the Lampizator Amber 3. Recently, just now, the Weiss DAC 501, which is absolutely bonkers incredible. I'm listening to a Carry Audio DMS 650 streamer / DAC. It's right behind me. I've been listening to it in system number 2 here for the last couple of hours, and it's a stunning piece as well. I've listened to what other DACs? Wow, there's been so many DACs coming through. The Nagra Classic DAC I've been listening to. That's a $15,000 DAC, but you know what? I prefer the less expensive Weiss DAC 501 to it. But anyway, DACs make a difference, right? Today I'm going to talk about all the DACs I've heard over the last year. I'm going to give a quick rundown of each one, tell you my favorite one, the one I chose finally after all this time for my reference system. Yeah, so I hope you enjoy. Let's get started. DACs are becoming more and more popular in the realm of hi-fi because that is considered part of your front-end source. And your front-end source is one of the most important aspects of your stereo system. So are DACs important? Absolutely. Do DACs all sound the same? Absolutely not. I have been trying so many DACs here over the past few weeks, few months, and they all have a different sound character, and they all bring something different within my system. I'm going to tell you about some DACs, my thoughts on some DACs that I've had in here. Right now, I am listening to, in my main system, a Weiss DAC 501. And this is a really expensive DAC. It comes in at almost $10,000, just under $10,000. The Music Room, tmraudio.com, sent it over for me to review and compare to my other DACs that I had here. The Chord Dave, the Danafrips Terminator 2, the Nagra Classic DAC. These are all high-end DACs that are world-class and have a unique, refined, beautiful sound to them. But at the same time, they all bring a different presentation. The Weiss DAC 501 is the best DAC I've ever heard, hands down, in my system. It just has a density to it that brings massive body to the music while retaining crisp. It's actually designed by Daniel Weiss, who has 50 years experience in creating digital things, digital solutions, I should say, for recording studios. So what the Weiss DAC 501 sounds like in my system, it sounds like I'm playing a master tape from a reel-to-reel recorder. It's smooth, it's silky, it's crisp, it's dense, but at the same time, it has that three-dimensionality to it, but it's not overdone. It images like crazy, but it's not overdone. The vocals are chesty and big, and they project out into the room with a realism that I haven't heard before. There's been other DACs that sounded eerie and real, but the Weiss 501 really sounds amazing. There are DSP modes which make this DAC unique. It's not just a DAC, it's also a headphone amp, it's a preamp, and it has DSP modes built in that you can enable or disable. For example, there's a vinyl emulation. If you like the sound of vinyl and analog, you can turn on the vinyl emulation, and it said it will bring a vinyl type of sound. Now, I tried it, and what this actually does is warm up the sound a little bit, add a little noise. You don't really hear noise, but it seems like there's a little noise in the background, not crackles and stuff. I'm just talking about the kind of noise that you would get in an analog system, right? And it also lessens the stereo separation. It makes for a pleasing, warm, full sound, but I personally preferred the sound of the DAC without that DSP function. But it's there if you want to bring life to some old, thin recordings, right? There's also room equalizer, where you can fix any room issues, such with bass nodes or treble splashiness. You can dial in the room EQ to your specific room. It also has a normal EQ. There's a de-esser to get rid of sibilance in songs. You know, when you hear those songs, and some speakers and some systems or amps have a way of accentuating that. So it did work, but again, I preferred it with it off. The Weiss DAC 501 is a world-class DAC. Unfortunately, to get that reel-to-reel studio, you are there in the studio with the artist kind of sound, it's gonna cost you just under $10,000. It's for people who are building serious big money systems. For example, if you spent $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 or more on your hi-fi, the Weiss DAC 501 will be right at home within that system. But you don't have to spend $10,000 to have a good sounding DAC. The Danafrips Terminator 2, for example, that I reviewed recently, is a beast of a DAC. It's big, it's heavy, it's a monstrosity, especially compared to the Weiss, which is small, sleek, and beautifully built. The Weiss DAC is made in Switzerland. The Danafrips is a bang for the buck kind of DAC, coming in at $4,500 US. It really competes with other DACs in the $6,500 range. You're getting a lot for your money here. It has a smooth sound. It has plenty of detail and precise imaging. It does the 3D as well, but it's a little darker in tone versus the Weiss. It's not as juicy or wet as the Weiss, but still a really, really, really good DAC. I have reviewed that on this channel. What about something like the Nagra Classic DAC? Now, the Nagra Classic DAC I've been listening to for a while because I do have a Nagra Classic Pre and a Nagra Classic amp in the house in my main system. So when I put in the DAC, I wanted to hear the DAC. It's a beautiful, organic, ethereal kind of DAC, right? It has a spaciousness about it where it projects everything in the room in its own space, right? It does the sound stage that's wide, that's tall, a little bit deep, not so deep, but it's a little bit leaner than, say, the Danafrips, or especially the Weiss. The Weiss has that body and density and kick and punch to it, all while retaining the detail. It's a pretty special piece, but the Nagra loses out on that punch and kick, so you don't get that effect from the drum kicks, you know, or the weight of the piano with the Nagra. It's a more lighter footed DAC. Some people like that presentation, but I gotta say, at $15,000 retail, I actually prefer the Weiss DAC 501 to the Nagra Classic DAC. That's just in my room, in my space. I also have an iFi IDSD Pro Signature, which is also a DAC, a headphone amp, and a preamp. It also has vintage new old stock GE tubes in it that you can activate with a switch on the front if you want a little bit of tube flavor. Now this DAC comes in at under $3,500, and wow, it is really, really, really good for the money. I've been listening to it, and I took out the Weiss DAC, I put in the iFi, totally different character. But the iFi also has punch, slam, dynamics, and kick. It's a little smooth, but it's also a big, very more spacious, I'd say, than the Nagra Classic DAC. It does the space and imaging and sound stage and holographic imaging, I'd say about 80% as well as the Chord DAC. The iFi DSD Pro Signature is one heck of a DAC for the money. As a matter of fact, it sounds better than some that I've heard that are double the cost. That's how good that iFi is. Does it beat or get close to the Weiss DAC? No, it doesn't. How about compared to the Terminator? Totally different character. The Terminator 2 is more refined and more smooth. It sounds a little more high-end than the iFi, but the iFi is fantastic for the money. What about the Chord DAC? Now, I had the Chord DAC here for a while. As a matter of fact, I just shipped it off to the new owner, a friend of mine who buys my gear sometimes when he wants something new. And the Chord DAC is a detail hound. It is a three-dimensional monster. It is as holographic and detailed as it gets in a DAC, but it still has body, right? It doesn't have the weight and density of the Weiss 501, but it has more detail. It jets out the sounds in a more three-dimensional way than the Weiss DAC 501. The DAC is one of the best DACs in the world. It's $12,500 without the stand. You add the stand, you're going to pay a little bit more. The Chord DAC is an exciting, dynamic listen, a lively listen, but it does have some meat on the bones. It's not as lean as the Nagra Classic, for example, right? Chord DAC, one of the best DACs in the world. If you like detail, if you like holographic imaging, I've not heard anything better than the Chord DAC. I've also had a DCS Bartok in my listening room a little while ago, and it was a beautiful, beautiful DAC. I believe it's $15,000. I may be wrong. Another high-end DAC. Again, a different sound signature. It was smooth. It was silky in my system. It was big. It was detailed, but it was a little drier when I compared it to the DAC. At the end of the day, I preferred the DAC to the Bartok, but some people may prefer the DCS Bartok. It also can come with a headphone amp as an option, but it is also a top-tier world-class DAC. What about something like the Lampizator Amber 3? I had that in my system for a while. I loved it at the time, but that was before I heard the Weiss DAC, the DAC, all of these crazy high-end DACs that have now spoiled my ears with what they are doing. Even so, the Lampizator Amber 3 is, I believe, a $4,500 DAC. It's a tube DAC, and it gives a little bit of that tube sound, but it's really a detailed, big, larger-than-life kind of sound. It excels with the vocals. They come out into the room. They're really big. The instrumentation is a little set back and recessed with the Amber 3, but it's a very, very sweet-sounding DAC. There's nothing harsh about it. It would go well in a neutral system, even a warmer system like I have. What about the Chord Cutest? I've had the Cutest, or I had it for a couple of years. I sold it not so long ago. The Cutest is under $2,000, and it's going to give you a livelier sound. It's going to give you more texture. It's going to have more punch. It's going to be more alive compared to something that you would get in a starter DAC, say a Blue Sound Node 2i. The Chord Cutest is a big step up from something like the Node 2. As long as your system is set up correctly and your speakers are placed correctly, the Chord Cutest is a fantastic DAC. Now, I've also reviewed the iFi IDSD, the lower end version. It's like $700. Now, that's a DAC, preamp, and a headphone amp. That's not going to break the bank. If you're looking for a nice wider sound stage, a little more detail, something like the Neo DSD from iFi might be up your alley. It's not going to cost you a fortune, but again, it will be an upgrade compared to DACs that are inside the Node 2i or DACs that are even inside most receivers or integrated amps. So those are the DACs that I've heard just recently. DACs do make a lot of difference in a well-tuned, well-set-up system. The higher you go up the chain in the DAC world, the more refined they get, the more high-end they sound. And I'll say it again, the best DAC I've heard, ever, is the Weiss DAC 501, followed by the DAC. Those two are tremendous. I then like the Nagra Classic. I like the Lampizator. I like them all, right? They just have a different sound signature. I always say, you can pay a lot more. It doesn't mean it's better for you. It just means it's different. Some people might prefer a $500 DAC in their system to a $10,000 DAC. So when you see all these crazy DACs and, ooh, I wish I could hear that, yeah, they may blow your mind and turn your world upside down and freak you out because they're so good. But again, you might not like that sound. For me, the Weiss DAC 501 is the winner because it has the meat, the density. I don't want to say meat. It's density and crispness and the detail the imaging, the separation, a little bit of 3D, the natural reverb we hear in the studio instead of that artificial reverb that some DACs can bring into the mix, which can flatten out the sound a little bit. It has the weight for drums and kick. It has weight for the piano. Piano in my room now sounds like a real piano. I love the Weiss DAC 501. These DACs that I talked about today are all world class. Just pick your poison, right? So the Weiss DAC 501 won out for me. It'll be in my reference system. I will compare all other DACs that come in to that Weiss 501. It is that good. That's the reason you never really see them on the used market for sale. Once you hear them, you send it away and you're like, where am I going to go from here, right? So that's my thoughts on the DACs, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this video, thumbs up and subscribe. I'll have more videos soon, and I'll see you then. Bye.